Hi friends, welcome to BAMU'S BIOGENIUS. Today we will discuss about species area relationships. This topic is taken from chapter number 15 of NCERT book. The point is 15.1.2 part 2. It is a part of patterns of biodiversity. This topic is very important for NEET and basic biodiversity studies. So let us see what is species area relationships. Alexander von Humboldt was a great German naturalist, a biogeographer, and an explorer. He is considered as one of the first biogeographers of the world. He explored South American region during 1799 to 1804. He was the author, or we can say that he was the first researcher who wrote a book on ecology. Its name was Essay on Geography of Plants. His books were referred by Darwin himself on HMS Beagle during his voyage. He was the first man or a researcher who warned the world about the depletion of the environment or the loss of flora and fauna in the world. He was a thorough gentleman, very inquisitive and enthusiastic person. He performed various experiments on the field and off the field, and he opposed colonialism, racism, and slavery also. He extensively studied the biodiversity of a South American region, and he came to the conclusion that during his study he observed that as the area increases, the number of species that within that particular area also increases. So there is a kind of relationship in between the species richness and the area that is explored for species richness. So that we have to see in this particular lecture. When we study a species area relationship, we should know what is a species richness. Species richness is nothing but a kind of a list of species that occur in a state area which is to be studied. So what German geographer E.V. Humboldt observed in South American jungles is that as the area increases, the species richness in that particular explored area that also increased. So he found a kind of a trend, and when he plotted a graph by keeping or by putting area on x-axis and species richness on y-axis, he got such a type of curve. This curve is known as a inverted rectangular hyperbola. Now you can see here, as area explored increased, gradually the number of species also increased. So he observed such a kind of a trend, and he made a graph. This is known as a species area relationship graph, where he observed that the as area increases, the species richness also increases. That means area is directly proportional to species, or species is directly proportional to area. So this can be converted into a mathematical equation. S is equal to Ca, where C is a constant, and here S means a species richness and A means area that is explored for that species richness. Now let us see in a detail. Now you can see here, this is the species area relationship graph. On x-axis area is there, and on y-axis species richness is there. This equation as a species number of species is directly proportional to area explored. This can be converted into a mathematical expression, and here you can see S as in the last slide. Space S is a richness, A is a area, C is a y-intercept, and Z is a slope of the line. Now C A to the power Z. So you can see here, initially as the area increased, you can see species richness also increased. But after some time, what happens that even if we increase the area, the corresponding increase in the species richness is not observed. So in this particular type of a curve, it becomes difficult to show the relationship between area and species richness. Now, for that purpose, this area species area relationship curve can be converted into a linear line by applying log-log scale. Now, what happens in a log-log scale is that we apply log on both the sides of the equation. So when we apply log s is equal to, you can see here, c into a becomes c plus a. So log c plus, and this z comes to the front. So log c plus z log a. Now you can see here, c is a y-intercept and z is a slope of the line. So we will discuss it later. But remember that C and Z, these are the constant for a particular type of taxonomic group, and it is specific for a particular type of a taxonomic group, and it is also specific for a particular kind of a region. So this is how that this equation that comes in, and when this equation, you can see here, this equation is a kind of or it gives a kind of a straight line. So this in this straight line, you can see here, we can show clearly the relationship between the area and species richness. So this is the importance of applying log or a log-log scale to the equation, so that that curve becomes linear, and now we can very easily show the species area relationship. Now remember that when log-log scale is applied to one variable which changes as a constant power of another, this log scale becomes linear, and it shows a kind of a slope to the line. Now what is the slope of a line? You can see here, when this particular line is drawn, the slope of this line is 1. That means what? For a particular increase in a y, same amount of increase in x that happens. So uh, rise is called as a dy, and run is called as a dx. So you can, in this case also, in a species area relationship, you can see here, as the area is increased, the same amount of rise is observed in a species richness. So when we divide dy by dx, we will get 1. That means the slope of this line is 1. Now this number depicting the slope can be used to show the increasing or decreasing diversity of the species in a given area. Now for example, if we study some areas, smaller areas, for a particular type of a taxonomic group, for example, if we study Britain for diversity of plants or richness, species richness of plants, or we study California for species richness of birds, or New York for a species richness of mollusks, what we observe that we get a kind of shallow graph. Now this graph has a z value, or this line has a z value is between 0.1 to 0.2. That shows us that a very small change in a area, there is a even more small change in the species richness. So you can imagine that dy by dx will always be point or below 1, or we can say that 0.1 to 0.2. Whereas if we study larger areas for a particular type of taxonomic group, for example here, if we study frugivorous birds of tropical forest of Africa, or if we study mammals of a tropical forest of America, what we observe that the slope of this line is z is equal to 1.15. That means it is more than 1. Now this suggests that dy by dx, or for a very small change in the area, there is a greater change in the species richness is observed, and that's why we get a steeper slope. And why this is happening? This is happening because when we consider a larger area, in larger areas, different types of ecosystems or habitat diversity or ecological niches are available for species to accommodate. So that's why more number of niches, ecological niches, or more number of habitats in a particular area. Obviously, what will happen if we consider a more area, we will get, or we will accommodate more number of habitats in that particular area, and that's why different habitats have different types of species population. So you can imagine that this is how that the diversity in these particular larger areas, that is more as compared to the area. So as area increases, the diversity increases more, and that's why the line in this particular regions or in a larger areas, it is steeper, and this is the significance of the species richness area curve. Now you can see, if for a particular type of ecosystem, or we can say that in an area, if the slope of the line is z is equal to 1, that means dy upon dx is 1, or we can say that for particular change in the area, the same change in the species richness is observed, and that's why the slope of the line is 1. Whereas if we see that the slope of, as we have seen in last slide also, if the slope is 0.1 to 0.2, that means that for very small, here for larger change in the area, very small species richness is observed, or rise in a very small species number is observed, and that's why we get the slope 0.1 to 0.2. Whereas in this case, uh, the steeper line is there and steeper slope is there. That slope is due to z is equal to 0.6 to 1.2, and such a type of steeper slope is observed in tropical areas of the world. That is because here it is always, z is always more than 1. That is because we can see here for this amount of a change, very great rise in species richness is observed. That means in these particular tropical areas, for a in a very small area, you will get more number of species. So, and this is when we talk about a particular type of a taxonomic group, for example, uh, frugivorous birds or mammals of a tropical forest, you will get the same type of a slope. irrespective of the region. We have studied that the frugivorous birds are from Africa and mammals from the tropical America, but still the curve we will get, it will be like this. So this is the importance of species area relationship curve. Now we will discuss about the applications of a species area curve. First application is its use in biodiversity conservation. Now ecologists and conservation biologists, they are using this species area curve for predicting the future loss of biodiversity in a given study area. Now, here, for example, we can see this example is cited by well-known author Elizabeth Goldberg in her book, The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History. This is an imaginary example. Suppose if we are building a particular kind of a shopping mall and in a given area. Now, what happens that when we build a shopping mall, there is a decrease in the forest area, and if that decrease is in an area that takes place, what happens or what will happen, corresponding there will be a corresponding decrease in the species richness, because whatever the animals that are dependent upon or harbored by that particular area, that may be insect, that may be a bird, that may be a snake, all these kind of animals get affected due to the construction of a shopping mall. So what will happen? There will be a corresponding decrease in the species richness. Now this decline is also supported by isolation of these animals. Again, the further decline will be there, that is known as additional decline due to increased isolation of that particular area. So these animals will again, the number of these animals will again decline, and this is how that the original species area relationship curve will be now at this place. That means this is how that we can predict, we can estimate the future loss of biodiversity in a given area. So there are another example, the people are using this species area curve for determining the future loss of biodiversity due to anthropogenic activities. Here, one example is cited by in a paper of Mark V. Lomolino in 2001, that the number of mammalian species got affected due to decrease in the area of montane forest. So this is how that this particular species area curve can be utilized, can be used to identify future loss of biodiversity. Now the second application of species area relationship curve is its use in a climate change study. We know that the slope of the line that can be compared or that can be used to study the increasing or a decreasing diversity of the given area. The ecologists who were studying the mountainous regions of the world, what they observed that the species, there is an increase in the number of species in a mountainous regions over the last 100 years. Now, what is the meaning of this? Meaning of this is that these particular newer species have arrived on these mountainous regions because of the global warming. And this is a clear-cut proof that global warming is happening. This is the study done by M.J. Stenbauer et al. In 2018, and his research was published in a Nature. So this is how that these species area relationship curves can be useful to study the climate change. Now, the third application of species area relationship curve is studying the effect of other environmental parameters. Now, we know that this curve exclusively gives us a kind of a relationship in between the area and the species richness. Now, if we remove the area by statistical methods or by applying certain kinds of statistical softwares, we can get the relationship between the other environmental parameters and the species richness. For example, this is the study that is done by Lomolino in 1982. It shows association between the species richness and island isolation. So that means here they have removed the area and just they have studied the isolation and species richness. That means the islands which are more isolated are plotted on the x-axis, and species richness is plotted on a y-axis. And what they observed, that you can see here. So this is how that for studying other environmental parameters also we can use these species area relationship curve. So you can see here, the more the isolated island, the more the species richness is there. So this is how that we can see that how the other environmental parameters that are responsible for increasing the species richness in a particular type of regions of the world. So this is all about the species area relationship curve. Thank you for patient hearing. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, BAMU'S BioGenius, for latest uploads, or like my videos and comment. If you have any queries, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.